Hello, everybody, and welcome to the round 6 preview as our Carlton Blues take on the Saints at Marvel Stadium at 3:20 p.m. on Sunday. This week has been unfortunately, a very familiar week for myself and for a lot of us. A familiar week for the wrong reasons. Last week out against Adelaide was, it was a bit of a red flag, a red alert performance. And I've tried my best to shake that feeling of not wanting to read too much into the result and too much into the performance. And I just couldn't. Maybe it's a little bit of mental scarring from what I've seen in the past and what I've seen throughout my entire life as a Carlton supporter. Just the level in which we were outplayed. And I guess it's very important to note, as we did and as we will continue to do so, especially in the early parts of the season, that it's very hard to define a season based off one game. On the other side, it's very easy to sometimes point out when a potential area of concern for a season is to come based off a game. And I just felt like last week was one of those performances. But listen, we do have to move on, but I'm also a little bit cautious and concerned. And I'm not putting this video out here to be negative and to promote negativity. I'm just being really honest about the fact that I have concerns. I have a confidence that we're going to respond, but that's also because I'm generally just confident about the group. And I do trust in what we've put around the group, what we've put around the club over the course of the last 18 months. But tell you what, this week, the level of response and then the microscope will obviously be firmly on us and firmly on our leaders and firmly on our midfield, who have come off a performance where they really underperformed. And the ownership piece is crucial. The language which we use in the lead up to this game is crucial. And I think everything just gets magnified after a performance like last week. I think for the most part, there's a real watch this space around Carlton this week. And what are they really made of and what are they really all about? The optimist in me tells me that, okay, the midfield mix that we had last week, we need to give them some time to play together again. How much time, I don't know. However, the other side of me says, what are we talking about? What are these excuses? There's no room for excuses anymore. This is a club that has preached high performance regularly over the course of the last 18 months. And I guess we'll find out. We'll find out on Sunday. It does feel like a cycle of conversation. Bad loss, how do we respond? What are they made of, etc. I feel like I've been using these same terms and these same phrases and these same sentences for the last 5 years of covering this group. And yeah, I'm just going to wait and see what they dish up on Sunday. It's pretty straightforward. The execution, the application, and the focus from the group this week is for me anyway, the critical aspect. So some updates on what we do know with respect to who's going to be available. We know that Mark Pitternet will be available, cleared of any damage to his eye. I think that's important for us, especially a group that needs to get better at, dare I say it, our midfield battles. I think he's a key piece to that. Saad, unfortunately, we now know that he'll be missing this week, a low-grade hamstring strain. And from the club website, it says that he's expected to miss 1 to 2 weeks. I haven't really heard too much about a low-grade hamstring strain, although I think Cripps had one last year and missed 1 week. So that's obviously a key out for us. Saad is a very consistent player and a very high-level player. Mitch McGovern is a test to play this week. He obviously was a laid out last week. He's important for our structure behind the ball, our defensive IQ behind the ball as well. And just generally speaking, he's a senior player and dare I say it, a leader of the group on the field. He's going to be a test as well. He's coming off, the 10-day break from last Thursday, and obviously he didn't play. So I would assume that that's enough time to come through after having calf tightness, unless it's something a little bit more serious. But that's a real watch this space. I feel like they'll name him, and I feel like they'll give him every chance to get up like they did last week. So that's a watch this space for sure. Jordan Boyd is in full training and will be available, which is interesting. I don't know if that really puts him up for selection for the AFL. I do wonder about his fitness, but with Sard out, it makes me think about that. Jack Martin is still unavailable, and all we know is that he's returning to skills next week. But in terms of the team, there are some performances in the VFL that I think I now turn my attention to because they've been, for the most part, consistent. I look at Chincotta, I look at Binns, I look at these guys. Paddy Dow is an interesting one. He always is an interesting conversation. I think only weeks ago, the conversation was around, it doesn't matter how well he plays in the VFL. There's the lack of trust around whether he can do it consistently at the AFL level, which I tend to agree with that. Unfortunately, I've gotten to a point with Paddy where I could probably trust him to come in for a game or two, but I don't know if I trust him to have the consistency at the highest level. And I'm someone that thinks more around the fact that we need the 5 best midfielders that we have and are available and that played last week to have more consistency in their game time. So we'll see what happens there, but there are a few players there that have definitely put their hand up for selection, and, you know, under the roof as well. It is a ground, as we always say over the last year, it is a ground where we now do play better at. It's also a ground where the Saints play better at. And if we're not careful, we'll see something similar this week to what we saw last week. And the reason why I say that is because I think Adelaide kind of played the way the Saints play. Really quick ball movement. We only need to watch the last few times that we've played the Saints to see where they've carved us up. It's the same names, it's the same players, it's the same positions that we leak opportunities to the opposition. So there's that. Storylines this week, going to be interesting. Obviously, Ross Lyon against the Blues, Liam Stocker against the Blues. My perception of the Saints is that they are disciplined. They've got a new coach, new coaching group, new system in place, and very much like what we saw last year with our group, I think is what we're seeing with the Saints this year. You know, it's fresh. It's a new perspective. I think Ross Lyon also commands a lot of respect, not too dissimilar to the way Voss commanded respect last year, and we saw that with the way that we were playing. But yeah, I think our mental application to this game on a really high level, we can go through stats, we can go through what makes us a good team, and when we're at our best, what are we doing? But I like to just simplify it, and I really, really am intrigued to see what our mental application to this game is. And maybe there is something in that with me where I need to stop thinking about the past, and you can only really focus on this season. But I struggle to do that. I really struggle to do that when I watch any game, or when I preview any game, or even when I review any game, because trends are there, the same conversations are there, and this isn't just a couple of weeks. This is a year-on thing, the same type of conversations. So we know that we're going to be we are a little hindered in our back line with Doherty and Sard not playing. They are key cogs in that defensive system. But that should not mean that we can't get the job done this Sunday. There is plenty of talent on the park. Not that we want to be relying on talent, but there's plenty of talent on the park that we can point out. And also, we're playing against a side who, they're bringing in Steele this week. They're bringing in Membry this week. But prior to this week, those two players haven't been there, and they've been decimated with injuries as well. And you look at the spirit in which they've played with. So I don't have any more excuses for the group. And last week, and that type of performance and that type of output, like, there has to be a line drawn in the sand at some point. Optimistic me will say, okay, we had some wins that were unconvincing, but nonetheless, you bank them and you take the 4 points. And at the end of the day, you got to get to finals with the amount of points that you have, and so on and so forth. The other side of my mind, which is creeping in, is that, well, the danger signs were there. Adelaide last week just exposed it all for what it was, and there was nowhere to hide, which is where the optimist in me comes back. And I say, all right, well, there's nothing to hide from. This is us. We're average, and this is it. So how are we going to respond? My patience is thin. There's no doubt about that. My patience is thin with this group, this club, and the performances that we see. And I never want to see a 10-goal loss like that last week again from this group. Like, there needs to be some level of accountability from the playing group. Discussions this week have been on everything. Like, everything's had a spotlight. I felt personally that not enough of the spotlight has gone on to the players and the ownership of their own careers. They're at this point in their career as a collective, and if you talk about the core of the group, they're at this point in their careers where I don't think it's unreasonable to say they should be more reliable and they should lead and be more accountable, to not allow really poor performances to happen like that last week. This is an issue that was happening years ago, and the excuse was, well, we're young, get 80 to 100 games into these boys and they'll be better for it. So I'm concerned. I have preliminary concerns, and I try my best not to get too caught up in a bad loss and too excited in a good win. There is that level of equilibrium that is needed. So there's that, and I do acknowledge and accept that. However, I won't get over last week until I see a proper response this week personally. It's a really important game. Every game is important, but this one is super important because I still think we're going to have a massive crowd. It's a sold out game, and I'm mindful that if we don't get the job done, what will that do to the fan base? Will that create a little bit more divide? I think it will. I think more doubts will come, and the more doubts that come, the less trust there is, and the less trust there is, the more negativity there's going to be. So that's a preliminary concern of mine. I guess I want my team to be reliable. I want to go and at least know that they're going to be reliable in the performance that they put in, and they're not going to embarrass the fans, the club, the Guernsey, the Monogram, the whole lot. So, yeah. I'm still seething, not going to lie. I'm still seething, but I've got to get over it. And we've all got to get over it because we are a microcosm of them, I think. I think the way we feel about things, they would for sure, probably magnified because they're in control somewhat. They're playing the games. But yeah, do not let last week happen again. I don't want to hear any excuses about who's not playing this week. We should be better at what we do as a system by now. We've had a full season last year, a full preseason last year, a full preseason this year to get it right and to improve. And I expect to see an improvement on what we have been doing in the first month of the season, starting from Sunday. So we go through a new cycle. So that's where my head's at. Looking forward to it, obviously. I love going to the football. In fact, I'm starting to really, really have a disdain for just the unaccountability and the really poor performances. So we'll see. I still have faith. I do still have faith. I do still have faith that there's going to be a response this week, and it's a non-negotiable to win the game this week for me. It's a non-negotiable. I don't have any other way to put it. So that's me. What about you? How do you feel coming into this week? Has last week dented your confidence in the group and our prospects this season? Is it unreasonable to put so much weight on last week's performance? Or do I just need to get over it? Let me know in the comments below. See what happens on Sunday. We've got a full week of content ahead. I look forward to bringing it to you. We'll go from there. Go Blues.